So I want to just open up by saying that this month started for us, for Deanna and me and my family, in a very, very joyous place. We celebrated the wedding of our son, Josh, who is our oldest son, and he married Tammy. And the two of them got married in the woods in southern Vermont near an inn. It was exactly the wedding that they wanted. It was beautiful. It was informal. We were surrounded by nature and by love. They have a dog that they've had for years now. And we started the chuppah, we started the ceremony, and the dog just kind of like hopped up to this little mound, sat himself down in between the bride and the groom. And I started the ceremony and I started talking heartfelt, of course, to Josh, he's, my baby, and to Tammy, who is his soulmate. And the dog promptly fell asleep, which I took as an expression of the dog's comfort and confidence in my presence. And thankfully, the humans in that space remained awake and engaged during the entire ceremony, which was remarkable. I wanted to reflect this morning about family. And arguably, and hear me out, Tish'ah B'Av, which is beginning tonight, which commemorates the destruction of the first temple, the second temple, other horrible things that befell our people. If you dig a little bit, you see that the commemoration of the holiday is about family. That is not immediately apparent. We don't have big meals on Tisha B'Av. Obviously, it's a fast day. Yes, we gather together, but we're not even supposed to formally greet each other. It's not about interconnection, at least on the face of it. And yet, I would say it's about family. Why? The rabbis identified that the first temple was most likely destroyed because the people worshipped idols. They weren't faithful to God. They said the second temple was most likely destroyed because of sinat chinam, which they understood to be baseless, causeless hatred. The people had hate towards each other. Maybe they thought they had reason, but the reasons really weren't legitimate for the hatred that one Jew showed to another. And so they said, everything came crashing down. The temple, our sovereignty, our well-being, it all came apart because we showed hatred towards each other. So I want to suggest that Tisha B'Av is an opportunity for us to think about our connection with others in the Jewish family. And that is something which with each passing generation is becoming more challenging because our children and our grandchildren are looking at the Jewish family perhaps with a more critical lens than maybe we and our ancestors did. Why is it important for us to think about the Jewish family, particularly on this day? And the reason is, sadly, that the hatred, the expressions of lack of regard are so powerful. There's something which happened recently, and you may have heard about it, in Eretz Yisrael, in holy Eretz Yisrael, at the Kotel, arguably the holiest space in the Jewish world. And I shudder to even share it with you, but I feel like I need to, and those of you who read about it will hear about it again. There is a group called Nashot HaKotel, Women of the Kotel. A group of women and their supporters have been getting together on Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the months, for years, to read from the Torah, to celebrate, to pray. And oftentimes there are members of Haredi communities that come and they actively disturb what's going on. Sometimes they blow whistles. Sometimes they try to drown out the prayers with very, very loud chanting. And this time, a young man, probably a teenager, got hold of a siddur that this group was using, ripped out some pages from the siddur, and blew his nose in the pages of the siddur. Now, I share that with you not to horrify you, though it's horrifying, because it gives you a very strong sense, you will never forget that, of an expression of hatred which reflects a real deep sinat chinam, a real deep sense of what you're doing is horrible. I need to stop it. What you're doing needs to be blotted out. It's the worst thing in the world, a kind of demonization of the other. Now, I have to say that there are many within the Haredi community, of course, that do not do anything like that. There is, in fact, a Haredi rabbi that sat down with the head of the conservative movement, Rabbi Jacob Blumenthal, and said, we need to find ways for us to acknowledge, to tolerate, even to celebrate each other. And he has spoken out against these types of horrific behavior. But we need to recognize that it exists. And, what do we do about it? Daniel Hartman and Yossi Klein Halevi, who are connected with the Hartman Institute, they have a regular podcast. And they spoke recently about Tisha B'Av, and they said, what is the point of Tisha B'Av? It is a day of national reckoning, but it's not working. We go through it, we fast, we sit on the floor, we chant lamentations, Eicha together. Is it working? It's not working. It's certainly not working enough. So what do we need to do? And Yossi Klein Halevi actually wrote a few years ago, and he reiterated just recently, it is important for us to be able to recognize and try to understand the other members of our family. We are family. The young man who did what he did, the women who were chanting their prayers are part of the same family. It may be very painful to recognize that. They share the kotel, they share history, they share an entire connection of Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people, of the Jewish family. So Yossi Klein Halevi said, let us try to think of the person who views the world differently from the way that I do within our Jewish family. The person whose views, in some respects, I might even find deeply troubling in a very, very profound way. And let me see if I can identify something that person, that group of people brings to the Jewish family that I recognize as being essential and positive. I'll quote you what he wrote a few years ago. One spiritually useful way to mark this time is for each Jew to consider the community he or she most resents and then contemplate a positive Jewish value embodied by that community. Think of the settlers' love of the land of Israel. Think of the left-wingers' love of peace. Think of the anti-Zionist Satmar women who distribute kosher food to any Jewish patient in New York hospital. Think of Reform rabbis who are struggling to keep Jews in an open society Jewish. Without compromising your convictions, allow yourself to feel a measure of gratitude toward ideological opponents who are trying in their way to contribute to the Jewish story. So I want to leave that with us. It is not easy. It is not easy, especially when people may hold views that we find deeply, deeply problematic. We don't have to stop doing what we're doing. We don't have to stop behaving the way we behave. We don't have to stop believing what we believe. We can and we should argue with people who see things differently. We should make our case. And if they say something that's worth our considering, perhaps we want to modify what we do and what we believe. But minimally, ladies and gentlemen, we have to avoid vilifying entire groups. We have to speak out when such vilification occurs. And I hope that we can get to know people as people. People within the Haredi community that I have gotten to know, I have gotten to know as people who care deeply about the Jewish people, who are human, who are humane. I hope that they, meeting me, can say the same thing about me. God knows we have enough enemies outside of our people who don't wish us well, to say the least, can we do our best not to turn against each other? Can we do our best within this family not to say that person isn't worthy of an ounce of my respect or my love or my time? We can't afford to demonize and even to dismiss members of the family. So I want to conclude with a verse that we're all familiar with and to share an insight that was shared to me by my colleague and friend, Rabbi Joe Potasnik. New York Board of Rabbis brings together rabbis of all different backgrounds. Hine matov umanaim, shevet achim gam yachad. How good is it, how pleasant it is for brothers and sisters to dwell, to sit together. But it doesn't just say that, it says gam yachad. How beautiful is it for brothers and sisters also to dwell together. Why also? So Rabbi Potasnik said, it's one thing for friends to sit together. You choose your friends. Yeah, friends are together. But for brothers and sisters to sit together, that doesn't always happen. So when they also are sitting together, when we can reach out to and embrace those we haven't chosen, but those who are part of our family and part of our story, that's really na'im. That's really pleasant. And that's something that we have to work towards. So I say that to each of us. Let us be mindful of others within the Jewish family. Let us try not to demonize. Let us see if we can get to know. And let us see if we can even embrace. Shabbat Shalom.